the UK has come to the European Union's (EU's) rescue and will release up to 1.5 million barrels of oil to combat a supplies shortage inflamed by Russia, Iran and members of the OPEC Plus group. The International Petroleum Syndicate is said to not be ready to increase oil production despite pleas from the energy-starved world. As lockdown restrictions eased and industries were spurred to life this year, the increased demand for energy has caused gas and oil prices to skyrocket to record highs. The government has now joined forces with the US, China, India, Japan and South Korea to drive oil prices down by flooding the markets with some 70 million barrels of oil. Towards this goal, the UK is set to dip into its strategic reserves. According to the Prime Minister's official spokesman, the coordinated effort is being led by the US, which itself has committed to releasing 50 million barrels. He said, "We will work closely with our international partners like the US to do what we can to support the global economy through the transition following the pandemic." That is why we are joining other countries led by the US and including China, India, Japan and Korea in allowing companies in the UK to voluntarily release some of their oil reserves. It is a sensible and a measured step to support global markets as we emerge from the pandemic. The spokesman added this is completely voluntary and not mandatory. It is estimated the UK could release the equivalent of up to 1.5 million barrels of oil if all companies were to choose this flexibility. The drastic measures were partly prompted by US consumers facing increasing prices for petrol. And the Organization of Petroleum Exporting Countries Plus, OPEC Plus, has so far refused to ease the market pressures, instead prioritizing its own post-pandemic recovery. The White House said, American consumers are feeling the impact of elevated gas prices at the pump and in their home heating bills, and American businesses are, too, because oil supply has not kept up with demand as the global economy emerges from the pandemic. That's why President Biden is using every tool available to him to work to lower prices and address the lack of supply. The decision has sparked concern of a brewing oil price crash. The OPEC Plus group consists of the original OPEC member states with the addition of closely aligned oil-producing nations, totaling 23 members. These include Russia, Saudi Arabia, Iran, the United Arab Emirates, UAE, and Venezuela. Russia, in particular, has been accused of exploiting the global energy crunch to gain political leverage over the European Union. Pundits have claimed Moscow has been exerting pressure on Brussels by strategically withholding gas supplies to push through the approval of the controversial Nord Stream 2 pipeline to Germany. Europe has, consequently, experienced record levels of inflation in the energy market this year, according to the latest figures published by Eurostat. The crisis has also touched the UK, where the cost of petrol has been steadily on the rise in the past weeks. On Monday, fuel prices rose for the 10th week in a row to record highs. The average price of a litre of oil at forecourts stood at about 146.89p and diesel cost 150.73p, according to government data. This is in stark contrast to last year's figures, which were brought down by strict restrictions on movement and lockdown life. The COVID pandemic took its toll on the UK's petroleum trade, with net imports halving. According to an official report from the government, the UK became a net exporter of oil by 0.5 million tonnes for the first time since 2004. A report by the Department for Business, Energy and Industrial Strategy reads, demand for petroleum products reached a record low in 2020, down 23% compared to 2019 as restrictions from there. COVID-19 pandemic limited activity. Most oil demand is typically for transport fuels, which were heavily impacted as their movement was restricted. The largest contraction was in demand for jet fuel, down 60% on 2019, the lowest level since 1984. Petrol also fell to the lowest level since 1963 and was down by 22% on 2019 prices.